One of the most painful discoveries in life is realizing that many people you called friends were never truly loyal to you. They were loyal to the value you brought into their lives. As long as your presence made their journey easier, they stayed close. As long as you solved problems, gave attention, shared opportunities, or made them feel better, they appreciated your company. But the moment your circumstances changed, many of them quietly changed with them. This truth hurts because we naturally believe friendship should be built on loyalty. Yet if you want to stop living in disappointment, you must understand a reality that most people spend years trying to deny. People are usually loyal to their own interests before they are loyal to any individual. Look around carefully and think about how most relationships begin. Some friendships are formed at school because you spend every day together. Others develop at work because you help each other achieve common goals. Some exist because of business, social circles, hobbies, or shared ambitions. There is nothing wrong with this. Shared interests often create meaningful connections. The mistake begins when you assume that shared interests automatically become lifelong loyalty. Circumstances change, priorities shift, and many relationships quietly disappear because they were never built on something deeper than convenience. Think about the people who once promised they would always be there for you. How many remained exactly the same after your life changed? What happened when you lost success, money, influence, or the ability to help them? Did everyone stay beside you? Or did some people slowly disappear without explanation? These moments are not accidents. They reveal an important lesson about human nature. Many people do not intentionally plan to betray you. They simply follow the direction of their own interests. When their priorities change, their loyalty often changes with them. This is why expecting permanent loyalty from everyone creates unnecessary suffering. Expectations built on fantasy almost always end in disappointment. We imagine that because we were kind, generous, and supportive, others will respond with the same level of commitment forever. But human beings are influenced by changing desires, fears, ambitions, and opportunities. Someone who values your friendship today may value a completely different priority tomorrow. Accepting this truth does not make you cold. It makes you realistic. Once you stop expecting impossible consistency from ordinary people, you stop feeling personally betrayed every time life changes. Notice how easily some people confuse usefulness with friendship. They contact you whenever they need advice, emotional support, financial help, or professional connection. They seem deeply interested in your life while they benefit from your presence. But once their needs are satisfied, communication becomes rare. Days turn into weeks, and weeks become months. Then suddenly they return the moment another favor becomes necessary. If you pay attention, these patterns become impossible to ignore. They are not revealing friendship. They are revealing dependency on convenience. Many people continue investing in these one-sided relationships because they believe greater sacrifice will eventually create greater loyalty. They think if I help them one more time, they will finally appreciate me. They continue giving their energy, time, and resources while expecting future devotion in return. Unfortunately, loyalty cannot be purchased through endless generosity. Kindness offered with hidden expectations eventually becomes resentment. True friendship is never built on emotional debt. If someone remains beside you only because of what you provide, then the relationship was never built on genuine respect to begin with. There is another important lesson hidden here. People often reveal what they truly value through the decisions they repeatedly make. Watch where they invest their time. Watch what they protect when difficult choices appear. Watch who they prioritize when circumstances become complicated. Actions quietly expose priorities far more accurately than emotional promises ever will. Someone may repeatedly tell you that you matter, but if their consistent choices always place personal convenience above your relationship, believe the behavior instead of the words. Patterns never lie for long. Understanding this reality also protects you from becoming bitter. Instead of expecting everyone to become your lifelong companion, you begin appreciating people for the role they genuinely play in your life. Some relationships are temporary, some exist for a particular season, others teach valuable lessons rather than lasting loyalty. Accepting this allows you to enjoy meaningful connections without building your emotional security upon them. You stop demanding permanence from relationships that were never designed to last forever. This does not mean genuine loyalty does not exist. It does. But it is incredibly rare. That rarity is exactly what gives it value. Truly loyal people remain consistent when circumstances become inconvenient. They respect you whether you are successful or struggling. They remain honest even when honesty costs them something. They celebrate your victories without hidden jealousy and support you without constantly calculating personal gain. These people are uncommon, which is why they should be appreciated deeply rather than expected from everyone you meet. The strongest individuals understand that emotional stability cannot depend entirely on the loyalty of others. They value friendships, but they never build their identity around them. They respect people without becoming emotionally dependent on them. They recognize that human interests constantly change, and because they understand this reality, they protect themselves from unnecessary disappointment. Instead of asking everyone to prove lifelong loyalty, they quietly observe character, appreciate consistency, and accept that actions always reveal where a person's real priorities belong. Once you understand that most people are loyal to their interests before they are loyal to you, you stop chasing impossible expectations and begin seeing relationships with clarity instead of illusion. And once you see this truth clearly, the next lesson will reveal why kindness, attention, and shared time should never be mistaken for genuine loyalty. Once you accept that most people naturally protect their own interests first, another mistake becomes much easier to recognize. Many people confuse kindness, attention, and shared time with genuine loyalty. They believe that because someone speaks gently, spends time with them, laughs with them, or offers occasional support, that person will always remain by their side. But human nature teaches a different lesson. Kindness is not always loyalty. Attention is not always commitment. Time spent together is not always proof of a lasting friendship. If you fail to understand this difference, you will continue expecting permanence from relationships that were never built to survive difficult seasons. Think about how easily people become emotionally attached when someone treats them well. A few meaningful conversations, a few thoughtful gestures, and a sense of connection begins to grow. It feels comforting to believe that you have found someone who will always stand beside you. But emotions often reach conclusions long before reality has provided enough evidence. This is where disappointment quietly begins. Instead of observing consistent character, people start trusting temporary feelings. They mistake pleasant experiences for permanent loyalty, and when circumstances change, they feel shocked by a reality that had been revealing itself all along. Kindness is valuable, but kindness alone does not tell you how someone will behave when life becomes difficult. Almost anyone can be kind when there is no personal cost involved. It is easy to smile during peaceful moments. It is easy to offer encouragement when everything is going well. But real loyalty is never measured during comfortable seasons. It is measured when supporting someone becomes inconvenient, uncomfortable, or even costly. That is the moment where appearances end and genuine character begins. Notice how some people become incredibly attentive while they benefit from your presence. They reply quickly to your messages, enjoy your company, and seem deeply interested in your life. But ask yourself a simple question. Would this same level of attention remain if you could no longer provide anything useful to them? If your success disappeared tomorrow, would they still make the same effort? If your influence vanished, would they still value your presence in exactly the same way? These questions are uncomfortable, but they reveal the difference between temporary companionship and lasting respect. Many friendships quietly depend on circumstances rather than character. School friends often remain close because they see each other every day. Colleagues develop friendships because they work toward common goals. Business relationships grow because both sides receive mutual benefits. There is nothing wrong with these connections. They can be enjoyable, supportive, and meaningful. The mistake is assuming they automatically become permanent simply because they feel strong in the present moment. Once the shared environment disappears, many relationships naturally fade because the foundation was convenience rather than deep commitment, another warning sign appears when someone's kindness changes depending on your situation. Some people celebrate your company while your life appears exciting, successful, or useful. But when you begin facing personal struggles, financial difficulties, or emotional challenges, their enthusiasm slowly disappears. They become distant without explanation. Their attention moves elsewhere because your circumstances no longer match their interests. This does not necessarily mean they plan to deceive you. It simply reveals that what seemed like loyalty was often connected to convenience, paid attention to consistency rather than intensity. Intense friendships often feel exciting because emotions grow quickly. People promise lifelong support within weeks. They describe you as family, tell you that they will always be there, and create the feeling that nothing could ever separate you. But genuine loyalty rarely announces itself with dramatic promises. Instead, it quietly proves itself through consistent actions over long periods of time. The people who remain dependable rarely need to convince you with words because their behavior already provides the evidence. Another common mistake is believing that someone who understands you automatically becomes loyal to you. Emotional connection can create comfort, but comfort alone does not guarantee commitment. Someone may genuinely enjoy talking with you while still placing their own priorities above the relationship whenever difficult choices appear. Understanding this helps you appreciate meaningful conversations without allowing them to become the sole foundation of trust. This is why observation always matters more than emotion. Watch what people do when maintaining the relationship requires effort. Observe whether they remember you only during moments of convenience or whether they continue showing respect when life becomes complicated. Do they disappear whenever challenges appear, only to return once everything feels comfortable again? Or do they remain steady regardless of changing circumstances? These repeated behaviors tell you far more than kind words ever will. One of the greatest forms of emotional freedom comes from appreciating kindness without becoming dependent on it. Enjoy the moments people share with you. Value genuine conversations. Be grateful for support when it is offered. But never build your entire sense of security upon temporary attention. People's lives change, their priorities change, their responsibilities change. If your happiness depends entirely on someone continuing to behave exactly as they do today, disappointment becomes almost inevitable. The wisest people enjoy relationships without becoming blinded by them. They welcome kindness but continue observing character. They appreciate attention without confusing it with lifelong commitment. They understand that true loyalty is exceptionally rare because it survives changing circumstances instead of depending upon them. This mindset protects them from unrealistic expectations while allowing them to value authentic relationships when they genuinely appear. When you stop confusing kindness, attention, and shared time with genuine loyalty, you begin seeing people more clearly and protecting your peace from unnecessary disappointment. And once you understand this difference, the next lesson will reveal why unrealistic expectations become the true source of the deepest betrayals people experience. After understanding that kindness, attention, and shared time do not automatically create loyalty, you arrive at one of the most important truths about human relationships. The deepest pain people experience is often not caused by betrayal itself. It is caused by the expectations they created long before the betrayal happened. If you truly want to stop suffering because of other people, you must stop expecting them to love, support, and sacrifice exactly the way you would. Every expectation you place on another person becomes an invisible agreement that exists only inside your own mind. The problem is that while you believe this agreement is real, the other person may never have accepted it at all. Human nature constantly reminds us that every individual sees the world through their own desires, fears, ambitions, and priorities. Yet many people unknowingly judge others by their own standards. They think, if I would never abandon someone during a difficult time, then surely they won't abandon me. Or they believe, if I always keep my promises, everyone else will naturally do the same. These assumptions feel reasonable because they reflect your own values. But expecting everyone to think, feel, and behave exactly like you is one of the fastest paths to disappointment. People do not always operate according to your principles. They operate according to their own. Think about how many friendships have ended because of silent expectations that were never spoken aloud. One person expected constant support. The other believed occasional contact was enough. One expected loyalty during every hardship. The other believed personal priorities should always come first. Neither person necessarily intended to hurt the other. But different expectations created completely different realities. This is why emotional pain often begins long before relationships fall apart. It begins the moment we expect someone to fulfill promises they never consciously made. Notice how expectations quietly change the way you see people. The moment you expect someone to always be available, every delayed reply feels like rejection. The moment you expect permanent loyalty, every disagreement feels like betrayal. The moment you expect someone to understand your emotions without explanation, every misunderstanding feels personal. Your expectations become a filter through which every action is interpreted. The higher those expectations rise, the easier it becomes to feel disappointed, even when the other person simply behaves according to their own priorities. One of the greatest emotional traps is believing that your sacrifices automatically create obligations in other people. You spend your time helping them, listening to their problems, supporting their dreams, and standing beside them during difficult moments. Deep inside, you begin believing they now owe you the same level of commitment. But genuine loyalty cannot be forced through emotional debt. If someone remains beside you only because they feel guilty, that relationship is already unstable. True loyalty comes from character, not obligation. This is why emotional dependence is so dangerous. When your happiness depends entirely on how another person treats you, you hand them control over your peace of mind without realizing it. Their decisions begin controlling your emotions. Their absence creates anxiety. Their attention determines your confidence. Their approval becomes necessary for your happiness. At that point, disappointment becomes unavoidable because no human being can consistently satisfy every emotional expectation another person places upon them. Instead of expecting people to always meet your emotional needs, begin observing who they consistently are. Accept them for their demonstrated character rather than your imagined potential. This shift changes everything. Instead of becoming attached to who you hope someone will become, you begin appreciating who they repeatedly prove themselves to be. Reality replaces fantasy, and with that change comes emotional freedom. Another important lesson is understanding that expectations often grow without limits. The more someone does for you, the more you begin expecting from them. Gratitude slowly transforms into entitlement without either person noticing. What once felt extraordinary eventually becomes normal. Then, when that effort decreases even slightly, disappointment appears. This happens because expectations naturally expand unless they are consciously managed. Appreciating what people genuinely choose to give creates healthier relationships than constantly focusing on what they have not provided. Pay attention to your own reactions whenever someone disappoints you. Before immediately blaming them, ask yourself an honest question. Did they actually break a promise, or did they simply fail to meet an expectation I created in my own mind? That single question can prevent countless misunderstandings. It encourages personal responsibility while helping you distinguish between genuine betrayal and unrealistic assumptions. This does not mean lowering your standards or accepting disrespect. Healthy boundaries remain essential. You should absolutely expect honesty, respect, and basic integrity from the people you allow close to you. But expecting every person to become your emotional protector, lifelong supporter, or constant source of validation creates pressure that very few relationships can survive. The strongest relationships are built on mutual respect, not unrealistic emotional demands. The people who experience the greatest inner peace are rarely those surrounded by perfect friends. They are the ones who understand human nature clearly. They value genuine loyalty when it appears, but they do not demand perfection from imperfect people. They recognize that everyone has changing priorities, personal struggles, and limitations. Because they accept this reality, They avoid much of the pain created by unrealistic expectations. Their happiness depends less on other people's behavior and more on their own emotional stability. When you stop expecting others to complete your emotional world, you stop giving them the power to destroy your peace. You become grateful for loyalty instead of demanding it, appreciative of kindness instead of depending on it, and wise enough to judge people by reality rather than imagination. That is the moment disappointment begins losing its control over your life. And once you free yourself from unrealistic expectations, the next lesson will show you why difficult times become the ultimate test that separates temporary companions from the few people who truly remain beside you. Once you stop placing unrealistic expectations on people, you begin seeing relationships with much greater clarity. But there is one experience that reveals more about a person's loyalty than years of comfortable conversations ever could. Difficult times have a unique way of exposing reality. When everything is going well, almost anyone can appear supportive, loyal, and dependable. Success attracts attention, comfort creates harmony, and shared enjoyment makes relationships feel effortless. But the moment life becomes difficult, the true nature of many relationships quietly begins to reveal itself. If you want to understand who truly deserves a place in your life, stop watching people during your victories and start observing them during your struggles. Think about how many people celebrate success because success is enjoyable. It feels good to stand beside someone who is admired, respected, or successful. There is excitement in being associated with achievement. But adversity changes everything. Hardship often removes the benefits that once kept certain relationships alive. Suddenly, there is nothing exciting to gain. There are no rewards for staying close. There is only inconvenience, uncertainty, and sacrifice. This is the moment when many temporary friendships naturally fade away. Not because every person is cruel, but because pressure forces priorities into the open. One of the greatest illusions in life is believing that the number of people around you during success represents the number of people who genuinely care about you. Large social circles often create the feeling of security. You believe you have countless friends because your phone is always busy, invitations never stop, and everyone seems interested in your life. But life has a way of testing these assumptions. A financial setback, a personal failure, the loss of status, or a difficult season often changes everything. The same people who once seemed constantly available become distant. Conversations grow shorter, invitations disappear, messages remain unanswered. At first, this change feels shocking, but in reality, it is simply revealing what was already true beneath the surface. Pressure has a remarkable ability to remove masks. During comfortable times, people have little reason to reveal their deeper priorities. They can maintain pleasant behavior because doing so requires very little sacrifice. But when supporting you begins costing time, energy, reputation, or personal comfort, their true values become visible. Some quietly disappear without explanation. Others remain physically present but emotionally absent. And then there are the rare individuals who continue standing beside you without expecting anything in return. These are the people whose actions deserve your respect because they remain consistent when consistency becomes difficult. Pay attention not only to who leaves during hardship, but also to how people respond to your struggles. Some individuals genuinely encourage you because they want to see you recover. Others secretly enjoy your difficulties because your setbacks make them feel more comfortable about their own lives. Envy often hides itself behind polite words, but difficult seasons expose emotions that success once concealed. Someone who becomes strangely distant after your success or strangely interested after your failure may be revealing motives they have hidden for years. Observing these emotional shifts teaches you more about human nature than endless conversations ever could. Another important lesson adversity teaches is that loyalty cannot be measured by words alone. Many people sincerely promise lifelong support when life feels stable. They say they will always stand beside you no matter what happens. But promises made during comfort are easy. Real loyalty begins where convenience ends. When helping you requires personal sacrifice, difficult decisions, or emotional effort, actions become far more important than declarations. The people who quietly remain dependable without making dramatic promises often possess stronger character than those who constantly speak about loyalty. This understanding should not make you resent those who leave. Instead, let it educate you. Every difficult season provides valuable information. It reveals which relationships were built upon genuine respect and which existed primarily because circumstances made them beneficial. Rather than becoming bitter, become observant. Accept what people's behavior teaches you instead of arguing with reality. The truth may hurt for a moment, but clarity protects you far longer than comforting illusions ever could. At the same time, remember that adversity also reveals your own character. Difficult seasons challenge you to remain honest without becoming naive, kind without becoming dependent, and strong without becoming emotionally closed. It is easy to lose faith in everyone after experiencing disappointment, but wisdom is not about distrusting the world. Wisdom is about learning to recognize genuine character more accurately. Hardship should sharpen your judgment, not harden your heart. One of the greatest advantages of accepting this truth is emotional freedom. You stop measuring your worth by the number of people standing beside you. Instead, you begin appreciating the few who remain consistent, regardless of changing circumstances. You no longer fear losing people whose loyalty depended entirely on convenience because you understand they were never truly committed in the first place. Their departure creates space for relationships built on honesty rather than temporary benefit. Eventually, you realize that difficult times are not only seasons of pain, they are also seasons of revelation. They expose hidden motives, clarify priorities, and separate appearance from reality. They remove the illusion that everyone who smiles at you is deeply committed to your well-being. Most importantly, they teach you that genuine loyalty is incredibly rare. Because it is rare, it should never be assumed. It should be recognized through repeated actions and deeply appreciated whenever it appears. The people who truly belong in your life are not always the loudest supporters during your victories. More often, they are the quiet, dependable individuals who remain respectful, honest, and present when life becomes difficult, and there is nothing obvious to gain by staying. And once you understand that adversity separates temporary companions from genuine loyalty, the next lesson will reveal why becoming emotionally self-reliant is the greatest protection against disappointment. After watching how difficult times reveal the true nature of relationships, you begin to understand one of the most liberating lessons in life. The strongest protection against disappointment is not finding perfectly loyal people. It is becoming emotionally self-reliant. Many people spend years searching for someone who will never leave them, never disappoint them, and never change. They build their emotional security on the hope that another person will always remain constant. But human beings are imperfect. Circumstances change, priorities shift, and even good people sometimes move in different directions. If your peace depends entirely on the loyalty of others, your emotional stability will always remain fragile. Real strength begins the moment you stop depending on other people to carry the weight of your happiness. Self-reliance does not mean isolating yourself or refusing to care about anyone. It means understanding that your confidence, peace, and sense of worth cannot depend on whether someone chooses to stay or leave. Relationships should enrich your life, not become the foundation that holds your entire identity together. When your emotional balance depends completely on another person, fear quietly enters every relationship. You become afraid of losing them, and afraid of disappointing them, and afraid of being abandoned. That fear slowly begins controlling your decisions. You stop acting according to your values and start acting according to your insecurities. Think about how many people remain in unhealthy friendships simply because they fear being alone. They tolerate disrespect, manipulation, dishonesty, and one-sided relationships because they believe having someone is better than having no one. But this belief creates emotional dependence. Instead of asking whether a relationship is healthy, they ask whether they can survive without it. The answer is always the same. You are far stronger than you believe. The moment you recognize that your peace does not depend on someone else's presence, you stop accepting relationships that constantly drain your energy. One of the greatest forms of freedom comes from knowing that you can stand on your own if necessary. This confidence changes everything. You no longer chase people who continuously ignore you. You no longer beg for attention from those who repeatedly take you for granted. You stop trying to convince others to value you because your sense of worth no longer depends on their approval. Self-respect quietly replaces desperation. Instead of asking people to choose you, you begin choosing environments and relationships that reflect your values. Notice how emotionally independent people behave differently during conflict. They are willing to walk away from relationships that repeatedly violate their principles because they understand that loneliness is temporary, but losing self-respect creates much deeper pain. They do not fear setting boundaries because they know their identity remains intact even if someone rejects those boundaries. This quiet confidence makes them much more difficult to manipulate. People who rely on guilt, emotional pressure, or fear of abandonment quickly lose power over someone who has learned to stand firmly on their own. Another important lesson is recognizing that self-reliance grows through daily habits rather than dramatic moments. It develops every time you solve your own problems instead of expecting someone else to rescue you. It grows whenever you make difficult decisions according to your principles instead of seeking constant approval. It becomes stronger every time you accept temporary discomfort instead of sacrificing your dignity simply to keep someone close. These small choices gradually build an inner stability that no relationship can provide. Many people mistakenly believe that becoming independent means becoming emotionally cold. The opposite is actually true. When you no longer depend on others for your happiness, you become capable of loving people more honestly. You stop loving from fear and begin loving from choice. You appreciate relationships without trying to control them. You value people's presence while accepting that they cannot remain the center of your emotional world forever. This creates healthier connections because they are based on mutual respect. Instead of emotional dependency, self-reliance also changes the way you respond to disappointment. Instead of collapsing whenever someone leaves, you adapt. Instead of questioning your worth because a friendship ended, you understand that changing circumstances are part of life. Instead of becoming bitter toward everyone, you simply become wiser about whom you allow close. Emotional independence does not eliminate pain, but it prevents pain from completely destroying your peace. You recover more quickly because your identity remains rooted within yourself instead of being tied entirely to another person's choices. Pay attention to those who constantly need reassurance from everyone around them. They often feel emotionally exhausted because their confidence depends on external validation. Every compliment temporarily lifts them, while every criticism deeply wounds them. In contrast, someone who has developed self-reliance listens to both praise and criticism without allowing either to define their identity. Their confidence comes from living according to their values, rather than constantly seeking approval. This is why the strongest individuals often appear calm even when relationships change. They appreciate loyalty whenever it exists, but they never make it the only source of their strength. They understand that genuine friendships are gifts, not guarantees, because they know they can stand alone if necessary. They are able to value relationships without becoming emotionally imprisoned by them. Ironically, this independence often attracts healthier people because emotionally secure individuals naturally respect those who respect themselves. The greatest victory in life is not finding someone who promises never to leave. It is becoming the kind of person who remains steady even if everyone else chooses a different path. When your confidence, peace, and purpose come from within, disappointment loses much of its power. You stop chasing loyalty and begin building a life that remains meaningful regardless of who stays or goes. That is the quiet strength very few people ever develop, yet it is one of the greatest forms of freedom a person can achieve. And once you become emotionally self-reliant, the final lesson will show you how to value relationships without ever making another person the foundation of your life. Before you share this in your video, Here's the completed final key point in the same style and flow as the previous sections. Everything you have learned so far leads to one final lesson that ties the entire message together. You have discovered that most people protect their own interest before they protect any relationship. You have learned that kindness is not always loyalty, that unrealistic expectations create unnecessary disappointment, that difficult times reveal who truly stands beside you, and that emotional self-reliance is your greatest source of strength. Now comes the final realization. Respect people, appreciate the good they bring into your life, but never build your entire world around them. The moment another person becomes the foundation of your happiness, identity, or purpose, you place your peace into hands you cannot control. Lasting strength comes from standing firmly on your own while allowing relationships to become meaningful additions to your life rather than the center of it. Many people spend their lives making one dangerous mistake. They organize their emotions around other people. Their confidence depends on how much attention they receive. Their happiness depends on who chooses to stay. Their motivation rises and falls according to someone else's approval. At first, this feels natural because human beings are created for connection. But connection should never become dependency. The difference between the two is enormous. Healthy relationships allow two strong individuals to grow together. Emotional dependency causes one person to carry the weight of another person's emotional stability. No relationship can survive that kind of pressure forever. Think about how often people lose themselves while trying to keep others close. They stop expressing honest opinions because they fear rejection. They ignore disrespect because they fear loneliness. They sacrifice personal goals because they fear disappointing someone else. Little by little, they abandon their own identity in exchange for temporary acceptance. But acceptance gained through self-betrayal is never real peace. If you must become someone else to keep people in your life, you are not protecting the relationship. You are slowly losing yourself. Life constantly reminds us that people change, priorities change, circumstances change. A close friend may move to another country. A trusted companion may become consumed by career responsibilities. Someone who once spoke with you every day may eventually communicate only occasionally. These changes do not always happen because people stop caring. Sometimes they happen simply because life moves in different directions. If your emotional foundation depends entirely on people remaining exactly the same, every change will feel like a personal loss. But when your foundation is built upon your own character, purpose, and values, you can accept these changes without losing yourself. One of the strongest signs of emotional maturity is appreciating relationships without trying to possess them. Truly confident people do not demand constant proof of loyalty. They do not become controlling because someone needs space. They do not panic whenever life pulls people in different directions. Instead, they understand that genuine respect cannot be forced. If someone values the relationship, their actions will reveal it naturally. If they choose another path, forcing them to stay only creates resentment. Wisdom means allowing people the freedom to reveal where your place truly exists in their lives. Another important lesson is learning the difference between loving people and depending on them. Love encourages growth, respect, honesty, and mutual support. Dependency creates fear, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion. When you depend on someone for your identity, every disagreement feels like a threat. Every period of silence feels like rejection. Every change creates insecurity. But when you value yourself independently, relationships become healthier because they are built on choice instead of fear. You remain because you genuinely enjoy each other's presence, not because you are emotionally unable to stand alone. Never measure your worth by the number of friends you have. Large social circles do not guarantee meaningful relationships. Some of the strongest individuals in history walked difficult paths with very few companions because they understood that quality always matters more than quantity. A single honest relationship built upon mutual respect is worth far more than countless friendships maintained only by convenience. Stop chasing numbers. Start recognizing character. Respect everyone you meet, but remember that respect does not require blind trust. Be kind without becoming naive. Be generous without allowing yourself to be used. Be compassionate without ignoring repeated patterns of dishonesty. These balances protect both your heart and your peace. You do not have to become suspicious of everyone. You simply need to become observant enough to distinguish between those who genuinely deserve your confidence and those who merely enjoy the benefits of your presence. The greatest freedom arrives when you no longer fear standing alone. At that moment, you stop begging for attention, chasing approval, and holding on to relationships that no longer reflect your values. You begin making decisions according to your principles instead of your insecurities. Ironically, this quiet confidence often attracts healthier people because emotionally mature individuals naturally respect those who respect themselves. Always remember that people will come into your life for different reasons. Some will teach valuable lessons. Some will remain only for a season. A very small number will prove themselves through years of consistency, honesty, and integrity. Appreciate each person for the role they genuinely play, but never surrender your identity to anyone. Your peace, purpose, and self-respect must always remain stronger than your dependence on another person's loyalty. When you stop expecting others to become the foundation of your life, you finally become the kind of person who cannot be easily broken by disappointment. And that is the quiet strength that allows you to move through life with wisdom, confidence, and lasting inner peace.